At the beginning, I had a couple different ideas on what I wanted to do, but the main thing I wanted to do was a game of some kind. So I looked at a couple different game engines and software to make games. Originally, I was going to make a football game using Snapchat Lens Studio, but pretty quickly I realized I just wasn't that passionate about the idea and didn't really enjoy Snapchat Lens Studio. So I went and looked at some more engines, and after a little experimentation, I decided I wanted to use RPG Maker. I started by watching some tutorials on how to create a project and start on designing a world. I kept it basic at first to just have a general outline of what I wanted the world to look like. Then I made the first village and added an NPC that walked randomly around the village. But at first the NPC only walked straight down and never turned to walk anywhere else despite putting in that it should have an equal chance to go any direction. I couldn't figure out what was wrong, so I decided to delete the NPC and just redo what I had done, and it worked the second time around. I'm not 100% sure what the problem was the first time. After that, I decided to design all the other towns that I was going to use as well as updating the world map to show all the new towns I was adding. I designed the towns using the tile sets provided by RPG Maker. I had a problem once I finished designing the overworld map where you could walk over the landscapes such as the trees and others and just walk to the end, and I couldn't figure out how to prevent you from going through the trees. It took me a while to figure out, but I had to open a separate menu, use a setting, and click on every space I didn't want the player to be able to walk to, which was quite tedious. When adding the battle system, it was a struggle to try to get the stats right, as I didn't want the fights to be impossibly hard, but I didn't want you to be able to kill all the enemies in one hit either. Eventually, I was able to get the right balance after I changed it from having 4 party members to being just 1 member in the crew. I made it so that on average, every 20 steps in the overworld would start a random battle, with a total of 4 different enemy types possible to show up. I added a final area in which a final boss plays, and there is dialogue between the main character and the villain. I kept the dialogue quite simple and to the point. For some reason, the background doesn't work in the final version of the game, but works in the test version. In one of the villages, I added an inside to one of the buildings, and I have an innkeeper as well as a shopkeeper who sells weapons. I didn't really have the time to make insides to every house as it would add a large workload while having very little benefit to the game. I also ran out of time on doing an opening cutscene which I attempted multiple times but found very difficult to do. Overall, I found RPG Maker to be a nice game engine that is very kind to beginners, but it is also very difficult to use if you want to do anything that is outside the box. It is a very restrictive engine that you have to want to make a very specific type of game if you want to use it. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied with what I made, and I think it's a pretty fun time overall. And I can imagine myself coming back and continuing on it, or starting a new project in the future.